everyone. Welcome to TSP Weekly. This is your tech startup podcast for Thursday, October 16th, 2014. Today we are once again recording at the Communitech Hub in a whole new section of the building that I've never been to before, actually, but it's beautiful. It has that same kind of retro tannery / modern office look going on.
The
Pipes running through the walls.
thumbs up room today?
The thumbs up room. I think that's a good sign. There is an actual thumbs up sculpture or ceramic thing on the side of the room, so I hope that bodes well for the podcast. My name is Darren Conley. I'm a local tech entrepreneur here in Kitchener-Waterloo, and with me as always is my co-host, fellow tech entrepreneur Stephen Campbell. How are you today, Stephen?
Again, I'm the bearer of great news.
All right.
Midterms are over.
Excellent.
And there was much rejoicing.
Now, for those who don't know, Stephen is a student at Conestoga College in town here, so you just did them this week?
Yep.
Midterms, yeah?
Yeah, we had some marketing, the dreaded MVC,
right.
some game design as well.
Excellent.
So for the CPA students, they have an exam on Monday, but for me, it's over.
Excellent.
So that means I get to look at playing a video game again for the first time in 3 or 4 weeks.
Did you build a game for your game exam?
We are building a game, yeah,
okay.
but it's not ready for me to play, and I certainly wouldn't want to play it for enjoyment.
Play it for work.
So I went to the Conestoga College Games Club president. He's known as El Presidente.
Of course.
Sean Olson.
Right.
And he recommended FTL to me for a little procrastination from midterms diversion. You ever heard of it? Faster Than Light?
I don't think I've heard of it, but I'm not super up on the gaming scene.
So
not
this
as much
is
as I should be, yeah.
This is sort of a turn-based, kind of easily accessible, $10. You're managing and running a spaceship as it runs from the rebel fleet. So really neat. I thought it was a little complicated at first when I looked at it, but after I dug under the covers a bit and under the sheets, it was really neat and very addictive. So
is it multiplayer? Do you play with other people?
No. But you do manage a crew.
Right.
So it was my wife and I. I named one of the guys myself. My wife was one, and my dog.
But your wife
and the missiles.
Did your wife play it with you?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Nope. I don't think she knows that she's in it. So.
I always, when I'm coding my own stuff too, you always throw my wife in as an example user in my
as a variable.
App. So the one I'm building right now, which has some movie reviews, I've written some fake movie reviews, but I've tried to do it as authentic as possible. So I made sure she had some disparaging remarks to make about Star Wars because she finds all the characters whiny. But anyway,
I'm still using Lorem Ipsum. But names I will.
Sometimes you got to do that.
So go play. Midterms are over. You get to play again.
Excellent. Well, listen, let's introduce our guest for today. Today joining us is Mr. Steve McCartney. We finally have somebody whose last name is not a puzzle to unfold for me to say here. Steve is the VP of Startup Services at Communitech and one of the headest honchos, I guess, that we've ever had. Can we say that on our podcast?
Yeah, I think that's on his business card, headest honcho.
Yeah, virtually headest honcho at Communitech here. Thanks for having us in your place.
It's a pleasure. Glad you guys can come. You're here on a busy day.
It is a busy day. So Techtoberfest is starting today, which is a pretty big deal in these parts.
Kicking off in about 2 hours. So.
That's right. And so maybe before we dive into the articles, just tell us real quick, Steve, what is Techtoberfest for those who may have never heard of it?
Well, it obviously mixes with Oktoberfest, so that there's some festivities in the evenings, and the second morning starts quite a bit later than the first morning, as one can imagine. But really the idea is we bring investors and a lot of startup companies together.
Okay.
And they get to do so in a pretty enjoyable atmosphere, but there's a little bit of serious time too. So today is a lot of presentation, some fun tonight, some VIP buses running around, going to all the cool places around KW. And then tomorrow afternoon, there'll be some direct one-on-one meetings for these young companies with VCs from all over the place. So
excellent.
It kind of mixes the whole bag together.
And there's some Oktoberfest-ness thrown into the mix, maybe?
Oh, big time.
A bit of sausage and...
It's all over the place.
Yeah?
Sausage and beer everywhere. Yeah.
Excellent. Perfect. Wonderful. Well, listen, before we dive too deeply into what Steve does here, we want to talk about a little bit of tech news. We got a few articles we thought we'd throw at you here. The first one is about a new app called Spring Moves. And we've heard a lot about fitness apps and fitness gadgets. This is another kind of fitness-based app, I guess. But its whole unique angle is that it will pair your music to the pace of your workout. So it takes some time to kind of analyze the way that you exercise and it's apparently within 30 seconds it can conduct the rhythm analysis and then match the proper tunes to your workouts. So if you're pounding away on the treadmill or pumping iron or whatever it is, you can do so to the beat of some music that matches your exercise routine, which I think is an interesting idea, actually. I thought we had kind of used up all the possibilities for fitness apps that we could possibly do, but here comes something that's a little bit more novel into the mix here. So first of all, both of you guys sitting in front of me look like you're in fairly good shape. Do either of you work out on a regular basis? And if so, do you use music?
Yes and yes. And I think the first thing I thought of is do you know where they're pulling the music from? Is this off your collection? Because it would be kind of cool if they could do this off Spotify or somewhere else so that it was fresh.
Yeah. My understanding here is that the article I'm looking at doesn't actually go too in depth about that aspect of it. But
I think it does. Offers its own streaming service and curation.
That's right. It does. So it does offer its own music. So that way you can discover, I guess, some new music while you're working out.
Yeah, because you do get. I find even if you do 3 or 4 for yourself, they can get a little tedious. Mm-hmm. So kind of nice. They mix it up, but also match it to the speed you're going, how intense things are going. I think it'd be kind of cool.
What about yourself, Stephen?
The first thing I noticed was that there was a typo in the article, which is not their fault. It's TechCrunch.
Okay,
when A starts a workout. So that got me in a bad mood when I was thinking about the spring move.
Stephen.
The unique playlist, my note here is bah. Every time I listen to music, it's a unique playlist.
Right.
Unless I'm listening to my own playlist. Like if I turn on the radio, that's unique every time. So every streaming radio service I join is a unique playlist or experience for me. So I don't know that I want to have a lot of discovery if I'm working out. I want to have my known music and my familiar music. For me, my working out these days isn't physical, it's mental. So I'm doing a lot of studying, and I have a lot of music on in the background to help me focus.
Right.
So I don't want a lot of discovery there. I want to have a fairly narrow spectrum of music. So I don't know that this has a lot of appeal to me.
Right. Well, I don't think...
Maybe if I'm running or lifting weights, it would.
Yeah.
I'm in a different mental state.
It's not a studying type app anyway, right? I don't know how it would match the rhythm of studying necessarily. Maybe the pulse of your brain waves or something, but...
Yeah. So when I'm jogging, is it going to be AC/DC as opposed to when I'm in my cool down mode, it's Lady Gaga? Like I just don't...
Yeah.
Maybe I just don't get it.
And I wonder how kind of smart it is with its music choices, right? So just because it has a beat that kind of matches your cadence of your running doesn't mean it's necessarily, motivational music necessarily. So I'm hoping that when they put this service together, they found music that, kind of connects well with the whole exercise.
Is Ivan going to have something that you can use here? Opeth isn't going to be on this, right? Ivan Lukjanchuk, he's got some pretty specific music tastes.
That's a shout out to our previous guest, by the way, for those who might not have heard the episode. But
run to your computers and listen to that episode.
Well, maybe there's a feature, or if there isn't, maybe they can make one where you can kind of choose. I'd rather work out to metal than pop, or something like that, or electronica or whatever, right?
Right.
I personally like the idea of kind of discovery, simply because I do get bored a lot of times listening to the same music over and over. I tend not to listen to music so much when I'm working out. Maybe this is just a mental concentration thing, but a lot of times I'm like counting my reps and I'm watching the clock, and my brain is kind of in another place. But I understand that a lot of people do listen to music and can find it very motivational.
Well, I totally agree. I think it's the cardio stuff where that helps. And I think, I would be looking for them to curate enough to say, here's the genres, so you can at least get yourself in a space that works for you.
Sure.
But I am looking for distraction if I'm doing some long, drawn-out thing, not something that'll be repetitive.
Focused.
Right.
So this way it takes my mind off the pain that I'm feeling at that given.
That's right, eh?
Do you have a dentist music app?
That's a good question. I think their whole value prop is that they kind of automatically are able to sense this kind of thing. And I wonder if this is something as a principle that can be applied to other things. I haven't really thought this through before I said it, but being able to kind of measure the rhythm of whatever activity that you're doing, and then put a soundtrack to that. So kind of getting, I guess, using the accelerometer or whatever it is to kind of get a beat for motion is not too tricky. But it'd be interesting to have apps that can kind of match music to the mood of whatever I'm happening to do that day. I need some good cooking music, or I need music for doing studying, or for doing whatever the case may be, watching my kids.
So the songs
there's a great product out of Toronto called Muse. Have you seen it with a headset?
Oh, I haven't.
But it's picking up all your brain waves. If you plug that in, maybe you'll get the one that's in the mood.
There we go, right?
Yeah. And then there's another app that has a concierge to it. So it'll say, it's Friday night. What do you want music for? College life, cooking, having a party. And Darren and I have hosted a couple poker games where we've used it before. So we'll say we're having a party and we want light music or whatever. So it gives you into a specific genre based on your activities.
Right.
So that's kind of neat. But it's not reading our brain waves or our cards or anything like that.
Right. Fair enough. Okay, awesome. Well, let's move on here, guys, and talk about our next article here. Monsieur, am I pronouncing that right? It's been a while since I've studied French. I think I'm saying it right. Monsieur, the drink robot.
You took a sharp left as soon as you left the word monsieur.
I'll stick to my English.
It's kind of German. It's kind of...
Well, they both have the uvular R, As a linguist, you throw around terms like that. But Monsieur, the drink robot, raises $2 million. So, basically this is kind of like an automated vending machine for alcoholic beverages that does the mixing for you and spits out your drink. The first thing I thought when I saw this was, why have we not had something like this before? Why has it taken so long? Because, when it comes to soft drinks, this kind of stuff has been around for ages. Yep. There's a restaurant down the road here in downtown Kitchener called Union Burger, and they have this very kind of fancy soda dispensing machine that you can mix kind of every flavor of Coke or Pepsi or 7-Up or whatever, and all the cherry, raspberry, orange variants in any kind of proportion you want, and it just spits it out for you as well. So we're bringing that functionality to the world of alcoholic beverages here. Have you guys ever been in a situation, maybe this is a dumb question, but have you ever been in a situation where you're at a bar or a club or an event where there's a bartender and you think, it's going to take me forever to get served because there are so many people waiting in the line, or I just can't seem to get their attention? I don't know. Is this an experience that's familiar to you guys or no?
As a restaurant guy, it's probably not a good thing to say that I have not had a trouble getting a drink in my past. That being said, I do think there's a space for it. I think it's really neat. One of the things that really struck me was that there's some big names behind it, like an NBA player. There's some marketing and some, why is an NBA player getting into the robot alcohol business, which was kind of neat. But I think back to the. I remember seeing an invention where a guy had put a keg into the back of his couch, and he could sort of in his armrest, it could fill up a beer and stuff like that from the bottom of the cup. Right. Put the cup on the beer on the couch, and it would fill it up. So I think there's a space for it not only in people's homes and in people's restaurants, but vending machines as far as stadiums. Down in the U.S., they're a little different depending on where you are. But there's some restaurants like I know Carrabba's Macaroni Grill. They do big, large bottles of wine on the table. Right. So they're trying to break the concept of buy the glass or even buy the bottle, and they just say, let me know how many glasses you had, kind of thing. So it's almost an honor system, and the wine is pre-sold because it's just sitting there on the table. You just pour it yourself. Yeah. And I know in Europe they have a lot more family style stuff like that. So I think it's a little cultural. Sure. That we're controlling alcohol, especially in Canada with the beer store and the LCBO and stuff like that. So what do you think, Steve?
Well, it's interesting because I just pulled up from our group here. We've got a Max Mixology startup here. Oh, okay. In the hub. It's essentially the same idea that it's pre-mixed drinks. A little bit of the madman world coming back again. I think people got away from mixed drinks and cocktails for a while. Yeah. And so, it's on the same model. It's like the Nespresso for drinking. Right. And it'll dispense up to 5 different cool drinks like Manhattans and Black Russians or whatever. So there's obviously something going on. Yeah. Because there's 2 of them. So yeah. Do I think it would work in a bar? No, I think it'd take too much of the romance out of getting a drink from a decent bartender. Do I think it'd be good at home at a party? I think it'd be great. Because now you can focus on something else, and somebody wants a strange beverage, they can go get at it.
That's right. And I don't have to buy a special book to learn how to mix, whatever it is. Johnny, what was the one I was going to think of? Harvey Wallbanger.
There you go.
Very
you guys
nice.
ever had a Harvey Wallbanger?
I was
pull out the bartender's handbook and there you go.
That's right.
I was thinking more of a screaming Viking.
Sure.
That?
Well,
Cheers.
maybe I'm not sure if this thing has kind of internet connectivity functionality, but it would be nice when people invent new drinks that it can kind of just download the new recipe and continually keep updated. So when somebody asks for, a bloody screwdriver or whatever.
It's a little early, but okay.
It knows how to put it together. Right?
There's a little worry for me about the tracking of drinks then. The bartender is your buddy, but the machine could say, you just had a drink 12 minutes ago, so you're going to have to wait another 3 minutes or, whatever, right? Or you've had 7 drinks.
Sure.
Well, I'm buying them for my table, or Mr. Machine, please give me another.
You're afraid the machine will be too judgmental of you.
Yeah, it could cut you off. It could track you. There's a lot of data that I'm not sure the bartender is downloading.
Right. Well, you bring up data, and that's an interesting point. I wonder if, this is something where they can collect some analytics about people's drinking habits and, use that as valuable data that they can sell to interested parties. So
do you need to tip Wally or no?
I guess not. Maybe that's, or maybe the tip's built into the price when you're making the purchase, right? Yeah. The other point to bring up, kind of on the other side of what you said, Stephen, is just tracking things as far as bartenders are a bit of a gatekeeper for underage people or people who have had too much to drink,
right,
to kind of prevent them from crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. With a machine like this, as long as somebody has access and I guess the ability to pay, I didn't see anything here saying you have to kind of show your driver's license to say that you're of proper drinking age before you can access the machine. So,
or what if you have to blow into the machine to get your next drink?
I wonder, maybe that's a feature that you can add on later on. But I wonder if that's a concern. I remember back when I was a kid, they used to have vending machines for cigarettes. I don't know if you guys remember this too, right?
Sure.
Usually they had those knobs that you kind of pull,
yep.
And those all disappeared at some point between my childhood and now. I haven't seen one in ages.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing it was this very reason, the accessibility to controlled, quote unquote, controlled substances. So I wonder how they might deal with that kind of factor in the mix. Maybe it's just up to the proprietor. Whoever installs a machine like this has to make sure there are safeguards.
Yeah, I think Steve's right. Like, I don't see it going into the charcoal.
Right.
You want to see Dave's face when he makes the martini. He does the martini shake. And
the charcoal, for those who don't know, is a local eatery that's very well reputed.
A steakhouse.
There you go.
But I could see it at sort of a BW3s, so a Buffalo Wild Wings, where you self-serve your own wings and you have to go up to the counter, and that might be interesting. It would compete with bartenders or waitresses or waiters.
Right.
Yeah,
so I don't know if you could do a mix.
The local one actually differs in that their target's the home market. Mm-hmm. They absolutely aren't looking to target commercial.
Right.
They think of this as a nice solution for somebody that's not into drinking but wants to provide it when they have a bunch of folks over.
I don't know. If I go to a party and they have that and a karaoke machine, I get nervous. Too many party machines.
Fair enough. Well, on that note, let's move on to our last article we want to talk about here. A startup called Looped without the E, Lopped. They are launching a bunch of location tracking tools specifically for use with conferences. They're targeting this market right now, and some big names behind them. So in the photo here, it looks like they have a kind of lanyard where you can wear a small piece of hardware, a little chip. And it also works with some beacon sensors that would be installed in the venue, and a mobile app that would run on people's phones. And the idea in a nutshell is that the system would track your movement throughout the conference. So if you're down on the what do we call it?
The mezzanine.
In the vendors area, or where they have the tables out there for people to display what's going on with their businesses. Mm-hmm. It could track which businesses you're visiting. It could automatically send you additional information about those businesses without you having to go and track it down. Contact info. So if you wanted to find out, like, who is that guy I talked to who was designing that new app that did whatever?
Oh, Steve.
There you go. Then you could, through their app, track back through your kind of path that you took that day, and discover that information, relatively easily, without having to search your pockets for the cards that you picked up from people handing them out or whatever the case may be. On the flip side, the vendors then could also track the people who are visiting their booth, how many people visited, once again, what their contact information was, have an easy way to get in touch with those people if they wanted to follow up for sale calls or whatever the case might be. And the big value proposition is that you don't have to alter people's behavior very much in order to make the thing work. You can still walk around, shake hands, talk to people. You don't have to scan a QR code or exchange data, with some specific app every time you meet somebody. It just kind of tracks it passively as you go through. What do you guys think? Could you see this being of value? Could you see yourself using something like this? Maybe we'll start with Steve here, since he's part of a big conference that's being organized and run right now.
In now an hour and a half. Is that where we're at?
That's right.
That's right.
I think my sense is that if it was a free conference, then that might be a fair exchange, because they're going to track not only which ones you visited, but how long you stayed there, all that kind of stuff. And that might be a free exchange. If you're going to a paid conference, and then, as you know, they, in addition to that, will allow a bunch of booths in that pay for the right to be there, I think then I like to go back to the QR or the barcode, where I hold it out and they just scan it, and they now have my ID and they'll send me information. So it's sort of the permission basis, because I would be afraid that there would just be too much stuff coming at me that really didn't interest me. I just slowed down to look at something. So I think it would depend on the conference. I think if it's free, there's always a bit of give and take.
Right.
But if it's paid, I think you have to give people a choice.
So you're worried about the possibility of spam, quote unquote spam, heading your way,
or just way too much, right? It's not really spam, but it's just more than you ever needed, because you get tons now. So
right,
sure.
Yeah. If I'm at a job fair as a student looking for co-op, and I walk by an engineering booth, or Conestoga does nursing and firemen and stuff. So just because I stop in front of a booth to talk to another student, maybe, and then my badge blink, I don't want to really get all that engineering, and I'm pretty specifically looking for development and stuff. So
sure,
I was concerned about the spam too, and then. They had a typo in this article as well, which
Stephen,
really bothered me.
You should be an editor, man.
Yeah, well, it just bothered me. So I just wanted to point that out. And the really interesting thing for me was the passive experience. This article came up in our mobile programming class yesterday. We were talking with the professor, Jean Filon, a little bit about the human-centered experience,
right?
And how that is a design sort of paradigm right now. And that was interesting for me in this concept of the passive technology that you wear around your neck and just walk around that tracks you.
Sure.
So we got into talking about the watch. Is that human-centered design? Do we run the watch, or does the watch run us, kind of thing? So it's kind of interesting. I'd love to talk about an article about human-centered design versus operations-based design or other different design philosophies.
Sure. Well, I think this technology, not this specific technology, but this technology as a whole, it's very early in development, right? I think there's still a lot of experimentation that's going on in this area. So maybe it's going to take, a few experiences where people are getting too much kind of coming their way, like you said, before, it can be tweaked to kind of find that happy medium of, do I get bombarded with materials just because I walked by a place, or do I have to spend 5 minutes specifically talking to an individual in this one area before it makes that connection that, yes, maybe you are interested and would want some more information, and how can I, adjust the amount of information that's getting sent my way and vice versa. Maybe this is a new opportunity for people to practice those kind of, what will we say, online social skills. And, just because somebody visited my booth, does that give me the right to put them on my mailing list? Or how do all those, social, I can't think of the right word. I don't want to say rules, but conventions, maybe. Those new social conventions, how do they get formed in dealing with technology like this?
Well, I think this particular one, you read it, it benefits the organizers much more, I think, than it benefits the people that are visiting. Also, probably helps them with flow. Which booths didn't get visited because we designed the corners wrong. There'll be a lot of great info, and it reminds me there's tons of this stuff in retail right now.
Right.
And so what the retailers are coming to is saying, hey, if you're a frequent visitor of my store, is it okay with you if I use your geolocation on your phone?
Right.
And there'll be an app. And so when you come in, if you say, I'm looking for a specific item, then it'll map you to the item. So they're trying to do it to make it easier for frequent customers that opt in.
Right.
And I think they're coming around to say we want them to opt in. We don't want to freak them out.
So maybe that's a big issue to work on. Then what's the value proposition for the customer or for the conference attendee for deciding to make use of this technology? Right. It has to be worth my while.
Yeah. And if it is, you will. You'll say, sure, okay, I get the value. I'll exchange that.
I could see the Craig Haney's team from Canadian Tire Innovations working on that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do like the passive factor here. I do like the idea that I can just put something around my neck, because anytime I've gone to a conference, I'm wearing some sort of lanyard or a name tag or whatever anyway. If there can be a little piece of technology in there that can help me potentially connect with the people that I'm interested in connecting with on a deeper level, great.
It's passive at that point, but then you have to actively delete 400 emails later on. So it's
potentially,
it's a double-edged
I guess that's
sword.
True. That's a real possibility, absolutely. Well, listen, guys, let's talk a little bit more with Steve. We are very privileged to have Steve McCartney with us today. And I know, Steve, there's a lot going on at Communitech, not just with Techtoberfest, but just in general around here. I was told that the Hyperdrive program is accepting new applications right now, which is a pretty big deal. And I'm sure there's a lot more going on in startup services. But before we kind of get into all that, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in this position and working here. Yeah.
Well, the short version is my career has mostly been telecom.
Okay.
And so, like all telecom guys my age, I went to Bell first.
Right.
And I left Bell in '94, and it was, in fact, to do a startup. And you sort of realize at a certain point in your life, it's if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. There's golden handcuffs, there's good salaries, there's great benefits, and eventually you're not going to leave. So I was 33, so much older than a lot of the startups we see here that are generated out of the universities.
But also much younger, I would guess, than most people would decide to leave a good job at Bell.
Yeah, it was that pivotal moment because you could just tell good salaries were already at hand and even better ones were going to follow. And if you've got a couple of kids, as I did, and those responsibilities, you're going to get locked in.
Sure.
It's just your lifestyle will just slightly exceed your income, and away you go, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I got started, and then 3 startups later, and one, I guess, a very young company was here after. So I did fiber to the home, first fiber to the home that did all the services in GTA.
Okay.
And that was a company called FCI Broadband. I had a wireless company that we sold just before doing that initiative.
Okay.
And then once that was sold, it came here. I was sort of headhunted a little bit for a company called Fibertech.
Okay.
And Fibertech was owned by the 3 hydros here and was an excellent company. And they had taken on a contract to do all the school boards. So they had a lot of fiber they'd already installed, and they were pretty bright. And they had installed it, took routes that went past as many businesses as they could, since they had to go to that school or that municipal building anyway. And it was a public-private partnership.
Okay.
And so they had created a very distinct and separately managed company, which was also good, instead of the 3 of them sort of trying to do it still intact.
Right.
And that gave us a great opportunity to later on, we beefed it up a little bit, made it class 5 carrier, sort of 5 nines kind of stuff.
Right.
And we had our own billing, so we became very attractive to a private equity company.
Do they have a class 6 carrier, or is that the top class 5? It just sounds awesome.
There may be one, but
you've not heard of it. So class 5 is...
Class 5 really suggests that, you operate generally at 5 nines, which means nothing's down for more than 5 minutes in a year.
Oh, okay.
Right.
That's kind of what
so
that
we're a class 5
to.
podcast, really.
So
We've never been down.
Yeah, so this is a class 5. It may be class 6. We may have
Thank you. This may be the first you've noticed.
This may be the first I've ever seen of this. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So anyway, that was a big deal for them. It's a lot of work to do that stuff, but what happened is we did a big roll-up.
Right.
And we other like companies that had been started off across the province, and it was pretty significant. And so we did about 6 or 7 of those in 24 months.
Wow.
But ultimately sold the company to Rogers, and
and
it was a very good deal.
And how long ago would this have been now?
So this would have been sold to them in, it might be early 2010, maybe late 2009.
Was that part of the strategy? Was that an exit strategy, or was that an opportunity?
Well, first of all, they were a great company, a private equity company, in the sense that there was no rush.
Right.
So we managed the company as though the horizon was limitless, but it's not. You're right.
Yeah.
Private equity has to exit in order to return money to their funders and the LPs, and so we knew there was an end. So that was the one that came along. It was very fortuitous. It was a great return for everybody, and it was a great deal for Rogers. They got a huge, about 68 or 6,900 kilometers of fiber optics.
Wow.
And customers like Sun Life, Manulife, Government of Canada, 15 school boards. I mean, it was a really, really good buy for them. So it was nice.
Yeah, sure. And it's ironic that you bring this up because just last night I had somebody knock on my door right as I was eating supper with my family with the shave and a haircut knock. Yeah. And I go up and it's a guy offering to sell us Bell's fiber service.
Oh, the new Fibe. That's right.
Fibe. Yeah. And he asked me what I had for my internet, and I said I'm on Tech Savvy. He's like, well, we can blow away their speed, but we can't beat their prices. And I'm like, well, I'm happy with my speed, so...
Have a nice day.
Take care, man. Yeah. I went back downstairs and finished supper.
You want some meatloaf?
That's right. But, yeah, I guess it's the point now where they're rolling it out to consumers, and it's not just for the businesses anymore, right?
Yeah, and they were obviously our big competitor when we did the first one, the FCI Broadband, the fiber to the home. They and Shaw was still here at that time.
Oh, right.
And the first thing they did before we even stuck a shovel in the ground was took us to the CRTC and tried to stop us. So they didn't quite easy. But anyway, so that brought me here.
Gotcha.
But then that also took me away from here.
Okay.
But back to Toronto, because as we rolled up, I had to sort of go in the middle to go out to all these locations. But
sure.
So from there, I did some M&A for a little while under a non-compete, and then I ended up over at a company called Bearing Media in Toronto, which is an internet media company that's privacy-based.
Okay.
Basically, it allows you to geo-target an advertisement.
Okay.
Without the advertiser or a carrier or even us knowing anything about the specific person. We just know where they actually live.
So about arm's length.
It mimics the drop. You know, if somebody comes around and puts something in your mailbox, they don't know who you are. They don't know who's in that house. They just know it's that house.
Right.
And they've based that decision on proximity to something or the class of the neighborhood or whatever. And so that's really does. It takes the post office experience online.
And how is it delivered? How is it actually delivered? It's not actually put in somebody's mailbox. This is software, yeah?
No, so I don't know if you're familiar with the whole way the media works in the background, but well over half of all the ads you see coming up on the screen are actually auctioned live just before you see them.
Right.
All happens about 100 milliseconds.
Sure.
So where Bearing Media fits in is they just add a little bit of value to the purchase.
I see.
And so we either purchase this on behalf of our clients, or we just become an added piece of data in the mix that allows somebody to buy it instead of for 1,000 impressions for $2, maybe now it's $7.
Sure.
Because it's much more accurate. I'm not buying LA. I'm just getting local Waterloo now. In fact, I'm getting downtown Waterloo only. That kind of stuff.
And so the ads are being delivered on either a desktop browser or a mobile.
Yep, they do
phone,
both mobile, So it's all in the U.S. The customers are Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, those kind of guys.
Interesting.
So where we promoted the CEO back, the founder, and so I'm still there on the board, and that's fun. But then from there, I was talking to a local, I don't know if you know Tim Jackson locally here, ex of Tech Capital, used to be at the university, he ran the Accelerator Center for a while. He's just a super guy.
Okay. And we haven't had him on the podcast yet. But
you should get him on.
He's only Cat 4 though, isn't he?
I don't know. He might take this to Cat 7 for you. He's a pretty remarkable. He and I chatted, and he asked if I'd be interested in working with that because they were invested in Bearing.
Okay.
But that sort of got me back into the community, and all the while I had been on the board at Cambridge Hydro. So I never really lost the connection.
Right.
And then we started talking about this job. And so we just saw it as a great place to return to. We love downtown Toronto. We were right downtown, but this community is kind of unique.
Sure is.
And
better traffic than Toronto.
The kids were grown, so they didn't need us anymore. They're living on their own, still in Toronto. They love the downtown scene.
Okay, yeah.
But it was a good timing. So.
In 1999, just when mobile was kind of becoming a mainstream thing, and people were still occasionally pulling into our bay installation area to get a car phone installed into their car itself. But
were you wearing overalls at any point?
I was not wearing overalls, but it was nice to see. It was nice going to be around for that transition, right? When digital was coming in and analog was still lingering, and all of that stuff. And texting hadn't really become a thing yet.
And backwards, I got into that as my first business. We started off as pure data on wireless.
Yeah.
And then to have a deal with Bell or Rogers, you had to pick one.
Right.
And you could only have one, and you had to open a retail. They said you need street presence.
Yeah.
And we didn't want retail, but we ended up with retail. So we did a cool thing. We made a deal with my old boss at Bell, and we put a Bell phone center inside an independent mobile store.
Interesting.
Whereas Bell wasn't, if you recall, Bell wasn't allowed to merge those two together. They were considered to have too much market power.
Yeah.
So you can't have the landline stuff mixed with that's not fair.
Well, when I was working there, that's what they actually did, though. It was a Bell World store where they put everything under one roof, and which was a lot of fun for those of us who had to learn all of the products and try to.
Well, we were Wireless World, and in '98 did that, and then in '99 they bought it from us themselves, and then Bell World.
Oh, there we go.
So
I worked for National
transition.
Cellular, which maybe was a competitor of...
No, they would have just been another agent.
Another agent. Okay, fair enough.
Cool.
Wonderful.
So you guys have like a secret phone handshake or something?
We'll hug after the podcast.
Yeah, you can't
over.
see it on an audio podcast. But, well, let me ask you then, Steve. So you've been involved with all these companies. What kind of role do you slot yourself into when you get involved with a company? Are you on the marketing side? Are you just managing people? Are you taking care of what kind of aspect?
Here at Communitech we're talking about, right?
Well, at Communitech or even in the past, like what has been your...
Well, the role I've had
focus?
since I left was that I did my own thing. And so
Right.
ultimately I was the CEO from really 94 until now.
Okay.
My daughter has summarized my career, CEO a lot, now VP.
Okay.
I said, that's a really short version.
So all of these companies you've described to us as you've generally been in a CEO role for the most part. Okay.
All of them, actually.
Driving the bus.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's good to know.
But of course that adds flavor. It takes you further and further away from the technology, and probably, you hope, makes you better and better at business and people management and all those things. And so what we find here is that we need all of the above. So where I'm acting as EIR, which isn't enough, because I've got to manage the EIRs and the other managers that do that work here. But
So that's entrepreneur in residence?
yeah,
Is that
entrepreneur or executive in residence in some cases
executive.
they call it that. And so my best position to advise them is probably on staging, on the broader management stuff. Often they'll come to me when they're trying to do an investment deal and structure it.
Right.
So I've seen a few of those, and so I can warn them a little bit about some things to be careful about. And then growth pains, just things to watch out for as you grow, and sort of the HR side of people flowing up above their skill levels.
Sure.
Everybody that started as a team isn't going to grow at the same rate. All these things
Right.
that become really emotional for them. So.
Sure.
And then we need UI, UX people. We need guys that can run dev teams. We've got Alan Quarry here, of course, who pretty much champions brand for us. And so the IRs tend to have a bit of a slot, create the matrix, and then we'll move them through and get them what they need.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I love create the matrix.
Yes.
Just throw that in the mix.
I'll put the
as
two
you're
pills
talking.
down on the table for you at the end of the...
No, perfect. At the end of the podcast,
But it is good, because what it says really is we've got it. It's here, we hope, if you need it. And then the wonderful thing is lots of times it's another young company.
Right.
The network exists, and so it may not even be us that helps somebody out. They go, hey, wait a minute, man, I just did that last week.
Right.
Sure.
And so they help out. Right.
Excellent. So as far as the here and now, then, what's kind of going on around Communitech that people might be interested in? We've talked about Techtoberfest a little bit. Tell us maybe a little bit more about Hyperdrive. I know we've mentioned it previously. We've had some Hyperdrive graduates as guests on the podcast here. But if there is somebody out there who's thinking, maybe I should apply to this Hyperdrive thing, maybe you can just give us a little bit of information.
Why would
about
you
what
do
that's
that?
all about. Yeah.
So we're unique here. So I guess you guys know that there's Velocity Garage and Velocity Foundry, and great companies are coming out of there. Then you've got Laurier has, literally it's within their programming, and the kids come here to Launchpad, and mostly they'll be here in the evenings. All great stuff. Whereas SSG or Startup Services Group, we're funded to take anyone. So if you're a tech company and you need some help, we'll help in some fashion or another.
Sure.
So right now we've probably got about 400 companies that we've spoken with in the last 6 months.
Wow.
We've taken in this year, it looks like by the year end we'll have taken in 500 new companies.
Wow.
Last year would have been around 460, so it's continuing to grow.
Sure.
And so what distinguishes why I raise all of that is within there you'll have lots of good companies that'll be really good, but they may only have 10 or 12 employees. They make a great living, put their kids through school, but they're never going to be, the Facebooks that everybody always talks about.
Sure.
Most companies, as we know, aren't.
Right.
But the accelerator's designed for companies that we think they're so scalable, whatever their product is going to be in demand, not only in Canada, but probably internationally. It has multiple applications. There's a bunch of reasons that says there's no way these guys, as smart as they may be, can make revenue fast enough to fund their opportunities that's going to come their way. And
So you're bridging that gap.
And we can help them create that. So that's the whole concept of accelerating them. So we're saying, what we want to do is we want to speed you up a little bit, because you should get to market. But when we're done with you, as it were, in those 6 months, you should be ready for a Series A investment. You may not need it, but we'd like to think that you're ready.
Okay.
So if somebody says to me, should I apply? Then I would say you should apply if you think you're highly scalable, Because you're going to sell part of your company here when you go for funding. That's pretty serious stuff.
Yep.
You should only be doing that for a bigger opportunity, which is because you're going to grow really fast.
Right.
So if you think in 6 months from now, you're going to be looking for $2-3 million because you're growing so fast, then yes, you should apply to a hyperdrive, to an accelerator.
Okay. And it's, now you've mentioned 6 months, so it is a 6-month program altogether.
3 months is very much heads down, going through all of the facets of their business, using a lot of Steve Blank's lean canvas stuff to get them started, and then going deeper. And then the last 3 months is all customer validation and acquisition. We push them very hard to get out there and make revenue.
Okay.
So we took only 5 this time out of 200 applicants.
Wow.
And right now it's just ended, just like literally just ended.
Yeah.
And 4 out of 5 are already funded, and 5 out of 5 have revenue paying customers.
Wow.
So it's been a really successful time.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. And this next cohort will start when?
February.
Oh, okay.
Might creep into March because we're trying to figure out the seasons. It's really bad for us if things start or end in July and August. Hard to get founders, hard to get investors, hard even sometimes to get the companies going. So at the latest it would be beginning of March.
Okay. Sounds good.
But we're taking applications right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've already got 30 or 40 in. We just announced it a week or two ago. So
excellent. And we can put a link somewhere when we post the podcast so that people can find where to go for applying for that.
And we'll only charge 20% of their.
That's right, of your future revenue.
Our usual.
Now, let's say I have a company that's maybe not quite at that point where I'm ready to take advantage of a program like Hyperdrive is ready to offer, but I have an idea. I've built something. Some people seem that it seems like some people like to use it, but it's just me and my co-founder maybe. Yeah. What could startup services offer for someone in that very early stage of development that way? Actually,
we offer a lot. So the process is pretty straightforward. Basically, you sign up. There's no cost to anything that Startup Services does for you. We have some managers, mostly they're either engineers or business trained MBAs, or they're both in some cases. Okay. And so their job today is to sit down with a company and say, let's take the broad look at what you're doing. Let's find out what stage you're at. Let's figure out what you need to do next. And so they'll coach them for quite a while on that process. Maybe they need another partner, there's some talent that's missing, etc. So they get them through to sort of the validation of the product, that somebody's going to want this thing. And if they reach a point where we think then they could use the services of a more mature entrepreneur or executive in residence, then they introduce them across to there. In the meantime, there's all kinds of things we do. Probably one of the nicest things is through Mars in Toronto, we have market intelligence. And we can prepare queries for them on their market space, and we even help them frame the questions. And Nabil, who runs that for us with 3 volunteers that sit down with the companies at no cost and help them frame all these questions properly. Wow. They'll get somewhere between $5,000 and $30,000 worth of market information for free.
Wow.
So that's huge.
Stuff you just can't afford to go do if you're a small company.
Sure.
Yeah, that's above and beyond the scope of Survey Monkeys. 10 free questions.
It's fantastic. Right. And the team at Mars, they've been down here to visit us. They're just they work super hard. They're professional researchers, and the stuff they turn out is terrific. So that's a really, really big deal, I think, anyway, for helping them out. And then the rest of them would tell you it's the mentoring.
Right.
It's getting this regular coaching. We like to think regular accountability. So if you're coming and saying, I think these are the 5 things, do we agree that's what you got to do in the next 4 weeks? Yeah. Is 4 weeks reasonable? Well, then come back and see me in 4 weeks.
Right.
So you end up being sort of like a little bit of an advisory board mentor role too. Right. And that's pretty good for CEO, especially tech guys, because they can easily go off on some super crazy interesting thing. Yeah. But the business really required you to do the things we talked about, right?
Gotcha.
So you bring them back. Don't forget it. Let's write it down. But let's get back to the stuff that we know will make you successful.
That must be a lot of fun with so many brilliant people and all the, when they do go off on these tangents into these really cool, like I like how you said crazy, but you said, but very, really good, intelligent tangents. But, you often probably have to grab the leg of the balloons of these people and just ground them again and say, remember we agreed that we're going to do this?
Yeah.
And yes, you can invent the spaceship and, the artificial intelligence, but we have to have an app today. So
teach them where the parking lot is.
Yeah.
Don't lose those great thoughts, because some of them are so smart.
Yeah.
No, that might be another business. So let's hang on to that.
Hold on, let me write that down.
But remember, we only have so much time before you have to make money.
Right.
And most often, most companies, it's cash flow that kills them. Right. And so we try to get them to the point, guys, that the money's got to come in, and funding's not your answer. Revenue is your answer.
Sure.
Funding's there to help you go get more revenue.
Right.
It's not a revenue source. And so we push.
Right. Now, I was going to ask, what do you find would be some of the typical issues that the average startup coming into Communitech would have to deal with? What are the big things that, if I'm an entrepreneur who's never really had any mentorship, you find yourself saying over and over and over, listen, you've got to do
certain
whatever.
Things.
Yeah.
20 push-ups a day.
Eat your vegetables first is sort of the deal. It's I think it's different here. So because there's multiple innovation centers in Ontario, I think they have different problems in each.
Right.
For us, I think it's fair to say we have all these brilliant technical people coming out of Waterloo. Yeah. We have good business people, great business people sometimes coming out of Laurier. But Laurier is a smaller school, and we haven't really been able, it's a big decision to pick your partner, so we can't match make them. We can't eHarmony them together, but we wish we could, because if anything, that's the number one problem. Whoever comes to you has got a great idea that's technical, or they've got a great business idea that requires some technical, but they didn't bring that talent with them when they came to visit. And so number one would be, we've got to fill your gaps.
Right.
And of course, generally speaking, they don't have any money, so then now you have to find someone just as passionate as you.
Sure.
And so we hold hence all the collisions and pub nights and everything else we hold here, is just to get people networking and meeting each other.
We were at a talent collision event, Steven and I, and picked up a few potential guests for the podcast. We were there, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like there's almost another kind of startup or business opportunity.
Yeah, and I'll say it before you say it. E-mingle, entrepreneurship mingle.
Yeah,
25%.
Oh, right. We want a bigger chunk of it if somebody builds it.
That just sounds like fun.
and that was part of why because that's our group that puts that on. Marilyn leads that from our group, and it's a great idea, because how often do you get companies pitching to the employee?
Right.
And so we do track everything that happens, and there were hirings after the first one, and we're hoping there's more hirings after this one. Right. But it also, for guys like you can sit back and see, it's a little bit of a quick snapshot of what the heck's going on right now.
Sure.
These are the companies that are keenly hiring. Well, then they're in the right space.
And this is why I like to go to events like this, not so much because I'm looking to hire, but I like to know what's happening. Right?
And the occasional free Danish doesn't hurt.
That's true. But, I wonder if there is something to be said for doing some more innovation in that matchmaking space, because it, like you said, this is something I hear a lot too, just in mingling in the, startup circles. You find people who aren't technical people, but they want to build something and they have this idea, or vice versa. And finding that mix is not just a matter of matching the talent, it's a matter of matching the personalities and the vision and the goals and the stage in life often too.
You need a really good algorithm.
It's
you
tricky.
do. Yeah,
I was at an event a week or two ago, and it was the C3 they call it, and it was a student event. But what they did is everybody that came in had a name tag on, and then the dot indicated if they were business, tech, dev, etc. Right. And then they were left to meet and get to know each other for the first half of the first day.
Right.
And then ultimately, though, when they sat down at the team, they knew they had to have this combination of dots to achieve the project that they were going to undertake as part of this weekend hacking sort of festival. So I thought that's getting closer.
Yeah, it facilitated the hello, my name is, right?
Yeah, we got them through chatting and stuff, and then by the time they all got to tables, they knew a little bit about each other, and they knew from the dot, you're a dev guy, I'm a biz guy, etc. And so I thought that was pretty smart.
That was at the talent collision too.
Yeah, they were using the dots.
Clear indication,
And on the other side, too, I attended a startup weekend here at Communitech back in April, which was the same kind of thing. It was a matter of matching up the different talents of the different people, and I found that was an excellent way to kind of at least explore those connections, right? For a weekend, you work with a team of people, and if you find there's some things that gel, great. I actually connected with one of the mentors at that event, is now working with me to build a mobile app that that I had wanted to get built for a long time and was never able to do it. Yeah. So that was a nice inadvertent
Can you give him a shout out?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. David Shack. He was one of our guests on a previous episode.
From Renault Me?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So he's doing some stuff on the side with me,
good dude.
Which is great. Yeah. So, okay, that's great. So now I feel like I have a good idea of what's going on in startup services. I feel like I have a good idea of where you're coming from. Where do you see yourself going moving forward here? You're involved here at Communitech. Do you still have that entrepreneurial itch where you could see yourself starting another company or two, or
It's hard not to have it around here, right? I mean, it does.
Sure.
Yeah. So in fact, I've even, and I don't want to name names, but I have made a couple of investments in startups here since they've graduated out here and stuff, because you just can't stay away from it.
Yeah, everybody's driving their shiny cars around, right?
Is this the stage that you're at now, where your involvement is to stick an investment in something, or could you still see yourself taking an active role in
if
something?
If the right thing came along, I think we're all susceptible. Right?
Yeah.
But right now, I think what we're really trying to do is, well, there's a couple things on the plate. So I don't know if you heard of Series 401.
I haven't, but I'd love to hear more
about it. Would it be good
it.
to know? Because I guess you've picked up the flavor that we kind of think that there's a clear system here, a supercluster, as it were, between Toronto and Waterloo.
Yep.
You got a lot of talent here in Waterloo, a lot of engineering coming up, but the money's pretty much in Toronto. And it's a financial district, and it's going to stay, most of it's going to stay down there. But they also have startups, huge numbers of startups in Toronto. Or Toronto, there you go. So you hear the talk
I
of
see a mascot coming.
Yeah, here it comes. So we had last year, we did an event at 111, which was a new accelerator that was being started up, which you may have heard of, at 111 Richmond. Same building as Google's in down there.
Okay, yeah.
And that's OCE partnering up with OMERS to create that. And it's big data is what the focus is. So we used their place, and we brought the best of Toronto and Waterloo together for a single event. And it was great, and so we're doing it again. So on November 19th, 7 companies from Waterloo region and 8 companies from the GTA will all pitch to a bunch of investors. Well over 100 investors will be there.
Wow.
All qualified investors, because it's the day after CIX, which is the innovation conference. And they come from the US and here, and it's in the same place. We're going to hold it in Mars Event Center, which is much bigger than the space we had last year. Yep. And we think that the more we do that, the better. Because what we find is nobody really cares where the company's from that's investing. Is it a good investment? What we really want to say is, hey, look, if you come to this area, it's worth the trip, because there's great companies all over the place. And so that's coming up.
Sure.
So that's a big initiative for us. And we want to keep doing that over and over again. So we cooperate and we make sure they're in the best place they can be as a company. Like if Mars can do a better job than us, or if we can do a better job than Ottawa, move them.
Sure.
Because everybody's got certain skills.
I love that kind of cooperative mindset that seems to keep coming up in, the startup kind of ecosystem in this area. It's not a matter of outdoing somebody or, competing against somebody. It's a matter of how can we help one another achieve success together, right? Which is a great kind of atmosphere to be soaking in.
It's that silly, put your aces in their places, to do another poker kind of thing, right? If you're good at it, put them there and let them do it, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all want to look back, and whether it happened here or elsewhere, all the companies you've touched, if you could list them all out and say, where are they now? It feels pretty good that a higher percentage of them survived and are prospering than may not have if we hadn't helped out. I mean, that's the bottom line for us stat that says, hey, we're beating the law of averages on startups, and they're doing better and growing bigger because they hung out here for a little while.
Absolutely.
That's sort of the mantra.
You're not listing your failed fast experiences?
No, actually,
all the successes.
This is where we give the caveat of this is personal opinion and doesn't reflect the opinions of Communitech. I'm not a fan of fail fast.
Right.
I'm a fan of don't frickin' fail. I think the idea of failing fast is something that's come out of the Valley. Just doesn't occur to me that that's an intelligent thing to do. At Hack the North, one of the speakers there actually said, we love companies where the guys failed four times and now we take them on and we invest in them. Quite frankly, I think that's nonsense.
Yep.
No one will touch you if you failed 4 times. The guy that they go chasing after is the guy that's had 2 good runs in a row. Right. And they'll give him money for whatever he's inventing. He can be coming up with a mop, and they'll give him cash for that. So fail fast, I'm not big on. I am for me, it's all focus on the customer. If you can't figure out that someone will buy it, stop doing that.
So you like the human-centered design then?
I do. Yeah. And I think, in fact, we are trying to increase the people around here in the AIR set that understand the human experience. Because for tech people, it's very cool. I'm just as guilty. You get so into something that it's the coolest thing ever. Well, go ask everybody else if it's the coolest thing ever. And then a lot of times it would be if.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that'll change everything for you, right?
Yeah.
So I would say, let's not fail. I would say minimize your losses if you're going to fail. Like, don't throw good money after bad. It's a really good and very old saying. But I'd say, no, let's do the first things first. That's, I guess, Peter Drucker was the first one to say that in like 61. Hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Stick to your priorities. Go after customers. Right. If you want a hobby, go get a hobby.
Yeah, sure.
But if you're out going to borrow somebody's money, get to work.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really cool to hear because you hear a lot of those lean startup model and the fail fast and that kind of stuff, and without having the experience that you have with 7 or 10 or successes behind you, you don't know.
But that's also a software line. So I think the other thing is, and what I love is that we're changing Foundry. Have you been to Foundry yet?
I haven't. I've walked past it.
Take a tour. Peter Hoos, if you want an intro, I'll intro you guys. He's also maybe not a bad guest because he's sort of running that for Mike. You've met Mike Kirkup before.
Yeah, Mike's been on. And
Mike's been on the podcast, yeah.
So Peter might be another one, or some of the companies down there, because it's all hardware. Mm-hmm. And hardware is very much, it's better for the economy if they're successful. There's all the logistical spin-offs, more employees, all that kind of stuff. But it's tougher and more expensive to start.
Right.
So you don't hear fail fast in the hardware world because your investment's much greater.
Yeah.
And there's no lean starting up because you're going to have to actually build some of these things in order to sell them. And so I think some of that comes out of this whole software business. So if I've only got some code on a couple of computers, it's not the end of the world. But if I own a building now,
I've got a robot.
I got to think about this.
And that's true. I'm taking a course now in doing software development, and that's very much how software developers think, right? You build something and it's broken, and then you tinker till it works, and you try to add another feature and it's broken again, and you tinker until it works, and so on and so on.
Time still has value, right? So just because it takes you time to do it, that still has value, but not as much as buying a robot eye, I guess, right? Or whatever.
Well, I think it just goes to say, like, what works in software development doesn't necessarily always work in business development. We can't just apply one from one to the other, right? No. But excellent advice there.
It is.
So I think we're just about time to wrap up here, guys.
Well, before you go, you should know that before you leave the building, we have some folks from Brazil here.
Okay.
The CDMN network has been working with them. So we've had Canadian companies go down to Brazil. And this is the second time through. And now the Brazilians are here. And they're down in the Hyperdrive space.
Oh, great.
So if you go down there, you could even say hi to them. And you never know. They've got a couple of weeks. Maybe you want to get an interview with those guys while they're here. And
we had somebody cancel on us for a future episode. So maybe we can slot them in. That would be
and to my knowledge, much to our shame, they all speak English as well as their wonderful Portuguese.
Of course.
I won't tell them my joke, I promise.
You have a Portuguese joke?
Oh, the Brazilian joke.
Oh, the George Bush one.
I didn't.
We'll skip that one.
Yeah, skip that one.
And I guess the only other thing that you might want to be aware of is Canada 3.0.
Oh, right.
And that's happening out in Calgary, but Communitech's part of helping promote that. And that's obviously the energy sector, but they're putting together 2 events into one. And you may have been to the Canada 3.0 when it was here in Ontario. So.
How long ago was it? I've only been here for a year, so maybe not.
The first one would have been 2-3 years back.
Okay.
I was here, and then they did Toronto at the MTCC. But those are just 2 really good examples of the fact that, and CDMN itself, is that we do soft landings all over the world.
Sure.
Google for Entrepreneurs, that we're a hub of now.
Yep.
We have a deal with all of them that if we've got companies that are our clients here, they can go and get 2-3 days of office space in any one of 8 cities in the U.S., no charge.
Wow.
And we'll do the same for them. But the soft landing is even more impressive. They'll get them over to Europe and the Middle East, and then we reciprocate.
Yes.
So Brazil is just one example. So that's sort of taking the whole thing to the next level. Where's this all going?
Sure.
It's very international. And we love that because you get a whole different point of view.
Yeah.
And back to your user experience, they're different. You know, Japanese don't use the computer or expect it to look the same way when they're experiencing all the things they do that we do.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you have to be super aware of if you're going to be global and if you're going to go in the accelerator.
Yeah.
You got to think a little bigger.
We got to find out how those Brazilians think, huh?
That's right.
think globally and act locally.
They picked a heck of a time to visit on a rainy October, Canadian day here. But
sorry, summer's on its way in their place. So,
it's true. It's true. Wonderful. Well, listen, let's wrap things up. Thank you very much for joining us here.
Well, thank you very
Stephen.
much. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
No, it's been excellent. And we want to thank you, our listeners, once again for joining us for another episode of TSP Weekly, the Tech Startup Podcast. Thank you, Communitech, for letting us record in their wonderful space here again. If you're listening, please feel free to send us your comments, your questions, your criticism, your feedback. You can reach us at our email address, feedback@tspweekly.com, or you can leave a comment on the website if you're so inclined to do that. So, from myself, Darren Conley, from my co-host, Stephen Campbell, and our guest, Steve McCartney from Communitech, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you all next week.